Hello, what we're going to be covering in this video are tuples. Lists work well for storing collections of items that can change throughout the life of a program. The ability to modify lists is particularly important when you're working with a list of users on a website or a list of characters in a game. However, sometimes you will want to create a list of items that cannot change. Tuples allow you to do just that. Python refers to values that cannot change as immutable, and an immutable list is called a tuple. A tuple looks just like a list, except you use parentheses instead of square brackets. Once you define a tuple, you can access individual elements by using each item's index, just as you would for a list. For example, if we have answers for an opinion poll that should always be the same, we can ensure that the answers do not change by putting the answers into a tuple. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do. We're going to go ahead and create an answers tuple. And again, we use parentheses instead of square brackets, and then we just specify each one of the answers separated by commas. So let me just go ahead, disagree, neutral, agree, and then strongly agree. Okay, so that is our tuple. We will go ahead and display it, and we have the 5 items in our tuple. You can tell it's a tuple because it is surrounded by parentheses instead of square brackets. So if we want to access strongly disagree, just like a list, we can go ahead and specify the index using square bracket notation, and that'll go ahead and define it. And if we want to go ahead and access strongly agree, we can go ahead and specify the index for that. Next, we're going to go ahead and try to change one of the items in the tuple's answers. So let's go ahead and try to do that. We'll put answers, and we're going to try to change strongly agree to nothing. So if I go ahead and do that, the code tries to change the value of the first answer, but Python returns a type error. Basically, because we are trying to alter a tuple, which can't be done to that type of object, Python tells us we can assign a new value to an item in a tuple. This is beneficial because we want Python to raise an error when a line of code tries to change an answer item. Tuples are technically defined by the presence of a comma. The parentheses make them look neater and more readable. If you want to define a tuple with one element, you need to include a trailing comma. So what I'm going to do is the first thing I'm going to attempt to define a tuple without that trailing comma. And then we will go ahead and display it. Oh, that is my T instead of my type. It holds 3 inside of it. But let's try to access the first element using square bracket notation and see what happens. And what we get is int object is not subscriptable. So what it's done is when you do not specify the comma after your single tuple, it'll just store it as the actual data type that was specified. Since we specified a 3, that's an int value. So what it's saved is my t is just an int value that is equal to 3. So let me go ahead and now do the same thing, but I will use that trailing comma. And then I will go ahead and try to access the first item in our tuple, and we'll hit enter. So now we're able to access the item because a tuple is subscriptable. And if we go ahead and actually print my t out, it'll go ahead and display that trailing comma. It does not often make sense to build a tuple with one element, but this can happen when tuples are generated automatically. So if you want to access all values in a tuple, you can just go ahead and loop over the values in a tuple using a for in loop, just as you did with a list. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and access all of our answers in our answers tuple using a for in loop. And then we'll just go ahead and print answer. And Python returns all the elements in the tuples just as it would for a list. Although you cannot modify a tuple, you can assign a new value to a variable that represents a tuple. So if we wanted to change our answers, we could redefine the entire tuple. So let me just go ahead and copy how we initially defined it. And what we're going to do is we're going to add NA as another potential answer. So what I need to do is I just need to add a comma and then N comma A. And hit enter. Oh, I messed up there. So it's Control V. What I did was I forgot to close my NA in quotes. Within quotes, so we'll hit enter. So it looks like it defined it correctly. So now we'll display it, and it has added NA. So Python does not raise any errors because reassigning a variable is valid. When compared with lists, tuples are simple data structures. Use them when you want to store a set of values that should not be changed throughout the life of a program. So that is where you would actually use those values. Examples would be days of the weeks or month in the year. If you, instead of defining those values in a list, you would define those values in a tuple. So that's all I had for this video. So we will talk to you later.